Hello, and welcome to Tom and Ben News Wikipedia News Edition. On 32nd episode of Season 2 is going to be finally the company that is best known for its The Speed of Lucifer and its other franchises. And it's...
Sega! Sega! Sega!
Sega Corporation is a Japanese video game company and subsidiary of Sega Sammy Holdings headquartered in Tokyo.
It produces several multi-million selling game franchises for arcades and consoles including Sonic the Hedgehog, Angry Birds, Football Manager, Phantasy Star, Puyo Puyo, Super Monkey Ball, Bayonetta, Total War, Virtua Fighter, Megami Tensei, Sakura Wars, Persona Yakuza.
From 1983 until 2001, Sega also developed its own consoles. Sega was founded by Martin Bromley and Richard Stewart as Mahangoru Hassan on June 3, 1960.
Shortly after, it acquired the assets of its predecessor, Service Games of Japan.
In 1965, it became known as Sega Enterprises Limited after acquiring Rosen Enterprises, an importer of coin-operated games.
Sega developed its first coin-operated game, Periscope, in 1966.
Sega was sold to Gulf and Western Industries in 1969.
Following a downturn in the arcade business in the early 1980s, Sega began to develop video game consoles, starting with the SG-1000 and Master System, but struggled against competitors such as the Nintendo Entertainment System.
In 1984, Sega executives David Rosen and Hayao Nakayama led a management buyout, with backing from CSK Corporation. In 1988, Sega released the Mega Drive, the Genesis, in North America.
The Mega Drive struggled against competition in Japan, but the Genesis found success overseas after the release of Sonic the Hedgehog in 1991 and briefly outsold its main competitor, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, in the US.
In 2001, after several commercial failures such as the 32X, Saturn, and Dreamcast, Sega stopped manufacturing consoles to become a third-party developer and publisher and was acquired by Sammy Corporation in 2004.
Sega Holdings Company Limited was established in 2015. Sega Corporation was renamed to Sega Games Company Limited, and its arcade division was split into Sega Interactive.
In 2020, Sega Games and Sega Interactive merged to become Sega Corporation. Sega's international branches, Sega of America and Sega Europe, are headquartered in Irvine, California, and London.
Its development studios include its internal research and development divisions, which utilize the Ryu Ga Gotoku Studio and Sonic Team brands for several core franchise entries. Sega Sapporo Studio, which mainly provides support for the Tokyo-based development teams as well as handling partial game development, and Atlas. including its R&D divisions, and 5 development studios in the UK and Europe. Creative Assembly, Sports Interactive, Sega Arclight, 2 Point Studios, and Rovio Entertainment, including Ruby Games.
Sega is one of the world's most prolific arcade game producers, and its mascot, Sonic, is internationally recognized.
Sega is recognized for its video game consoles, creativity, and innovations.
In more recent years, it has been criticized for its business decisions and the quality of its creative output. Being the entertainment contents division of Sega Sammy Holdings, forming one half of the Sega Sammy Group, Sega also owns a toy and amusement machine company, Sega Fave, which comprises its arcade development and manufacturing divisions and 2 animation studios, TNS Entertainment, which animates, produces, and distributes Anim, and Marza Animation Planet, which specializes in CG animation. In May 1940, American businessmen Martin Bromley, Irving Bromberg, and James Humphrey formed Standard Games in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Their aim was to provide coin-operated amusement machines, including slot machines, to military bases as the increase in personnel with the onset of World War II would create demand for entertainment.
After the war, the founders sold Standard Games in 1945 and established Service Games the next year, named for the military focus.
After the U.S. government outlawed slot machines in its territories in 1952, Bromley sent employees Richard Stewart and Ray Lemmer to Tokyo to establish Service Games of Japan to provide coin-operated slot machines to U.S. bases in Japan.
A year later, all 5 men established Service Games Panama to control the entities of Service Games worldwide.
The company expanded over the next 7 years to include distribution in South Korea, the Philippines, and South Vietnam.
The name Sega, an abbreviation of Service Games, was first used in 1954 on a slot machine, the Diamond Star. Due to notoriety arising from investigations by the U.S. government into criminal business practices, Service Games of Japan was dissolved on May 31, 1960.
On June 3, Bromley established 2 companies to take over its business activities, Nihon Norikyu Busan and Nihon Chike Saizo.
The 2 new companies purchased all of Service Games of Japan's assets.
Chike Saizo, doing business as Sega Incorporated, focused on manufacturing slot machines.
Norikyu Busan, doing business under Stewart as Unimatic Incorporated, served as a distributor and operator of coin-operated machines, particularly jukeboxes.
The companies merged in 1964, retaining the Nihon Norikyu Busan name.
Around the same time, David Rosen, an American officer in the United States Air Force stationed in Japan, launched a photo booth business in Tokyo in 1954.
This company became Rosen Enterprises and in 1957 began importing coin-operated games into Japan.
In 1965, Nihon Norikyu Busan acquired Rosen Enterprises to form Sega Enterprises Limited.
Rosen was installed as the CEO and managing director, while Stewart was named president and Lemmer was the director of planning.
Shortly afterward, Sega stopped leasing to military bases and moved its focus from slot machines to coin-operated amusement machines.
Its imports included rock-hole and jukeboxes, pinball games by Williams, and gun games by Midway Manufacturing.
Because Sega imported second-hand machines, which required frequent maintenance, it began constructing replacement guns and flippers for its imported games.
According to former Sega director Akira Nage, this led to the company developing its own games.
The first arcade electromechanical game, EM game, Sega manufactured was the submarine simulator Periscope, released worldwide in the late 1960s.
It featured light and sound effects, considered innovative and was successful in Japan.
It was then exported to malls and department stores in Europe and the United States and helped standardize the 25-cent per play cost for arcade games in the US.
Sega was surprised by the success, and for the next 2 years, the company produced and exported between 8 and 10 games per year.
The worldwide success of Periscope led to a technological renaissance in the arcade industry, which was reinvigorated by a wave of audio-visual EM novelty games that followed in the wake of Periscope during the late 1960s to early 1970s.
However, rampant piracy led Sega to cease exporting its games around 1970.
In 1969, Sega was sold to the American conglomerate Gulf and Western Industries, although Rosen remained CEO.
In 1974, Gulf and Western made Sega Enterprises Limited, a subsidiary of an American company, renamed Sega Enterprises Incorporated.
Sega released Voltron, its first video-based game, in 1973.
Despite late competition from Tato's hit arcade game Space Invaders in 1978, Sega prospered from the arcade video game boom of the late 1970s, with revenues climbing to over US $100 million by 1979.
During this period, Sega acquired Gremlin Industries, which manufactured microprocessor-based arcade games, and Sco Bueki, a Koina distributor founded and owned by Hayao Nakayama.
Nakayama was placed in a management role of Sega's Japanese operations.
In the early 1980s, Sega was one of the top 5 arcade game manufacturers active in the United States, as company revenues rose to $214 million.
1979 saw the release of Head-On, which introduced the Eat the Dots gameplay Namco later used in Pac-Man.
In 1981, Sega licensed Konami's Frogger, its most successful game until then.
In 1982, Sega introduced the first game with isometric graphics, Zexon.
Following a downturn in the arcade business, starting in 1982, Gulf and Western sold its North American arcade game manufacturing organization and the licensing rights for its arcade games to Valley Manufacturing in September 1983.
Gulf and Western retained Sega's North American R&D operation and its Japanese subsidiary, Sega Enterprises Limited.
With its arcade business in decline, Sega Enterprises Limited President Nakayama advocated for the company to use its hardware expertise to move into the home consumer market in Japan.
This led to Sega's development of a computer, the SC-3000.
Learning that Nintendo was developing a games-only console, the Famicom, Sega developed its first home video game system, the SG-1000, alongside the SC-3000.
rebranded versions of the SG-1000 were released in several other markets worldwide.
The SG-1000 sold 160,000 units in 1983, which far exceeded Sega's projection of 50,000 in the first year but was outpaced by the Famicom.
This was in part because Nintendo expanded its game library by porting third-party developers, whereas Sega was hesitant to collaborate with companies with which it was competing in the arcades.
In November 1983, Rosen announced his intention to step down as president of Sega Enterprises, Incorporated on January 1, 1984.
Jeffrey Rockless was announced as the new president and CEO of Sega.
Shortly after the launch of the SG-1000 and the death of company founder Charles Bluedern, Gulf and Western began to sell off its secondary businesses.
Nakayama and Rosen arranged a management buyout of the Japanese subsidiary in 1984 with financial backing from Computer Service, a prominent Japanese software company.
Sega's Japanese assets were purchased for $38 million by a group of investors led by Rosen and Nakayama.
Isao Okawa, head of CSK, became chairman, while Nakayama was installed as CEO of Sega Enterprises Limited.
In 1985, Sega began working on the Mark III, a redesigned SG-1000.
For North America, Sega rebranded the Mark III as the Master System, with a futuristic design intended to appeal to Western tastes.
The Mark III was released in Japan in October 1985.
Despite featuring more powerful hardware than the Famicom, in some ways it was unsuccessful at launch.
As Nintendo required third-party developers not to publish their Famicom games on other consoles, Sega developed its own games and obtained the rights to port games from other developers.
To help market the console in North America, Sega planned to sell the Master System as a toy, similar to how Nintendo had done with the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Sega partnered with Tonka, an American toy company, to make use of Tonka's expertise in the toy industry.
Ineffective marketing by Tonka handicapped sales of the Master System.
By early 1992, production had ceased in North America.
The Master System sold between 1.5 million and 2 million units in the region.
This was less market share in North America than both Nintendo and Atari, which controlled 80% and 12% of the market.
The Master System was eventually a success in Europe, where its sales were comparable to the NES.
As late as 1993, the Master System's active installed user base in Europe was 6.25 million units.
The Master System has had continued success in Brazil.
New versions continue to be released by Sega's partner in the region, Tectoy.
By 2016, the Master System had sold 8 million units in Brazil.
During 1984, Sega opened its European division of arcade distribution, Sega Europe.
It re-entered the North American arcade market in 1985 with the establishment of Sega Enterprises USA at the end of a deal with Dolly.
The release of Hang-On in 1985 would prove successful in the region, becoming so popular that Sega struggled to keep up with demand for the game.
UFO Catcher was introduced in 1985 and as of 2005 was Japan's most commonly installed claw machine.
In 1986, Sega of America was established to manage the company's consumer products in North America, beginning with marketing the Master System.
During Sega's partnership with Tonka, Sega of America relinquished marketing and distribution of the console and focused on customer support and some localization of games.
Outrun, released in 1986, became Sega's best-selling arcade cabinet of the 1980s.
Former Sega director Akira Nage said Hang-On and Outrun helped to pull the arcade game market out of the 1982 downturn and created new genres of video games. We will continue more about Sega in part 2, so stay tuned.